Welcome everyone to the MLOps Live webinar series, the place where we talk about bringing data science to production to see real business value from your AI and AI initiatives. We're really happy to see you all here with us today. We've got a fantastic session coming up. My name is Edith, and I'm the head of community and open source marketing at Iguazio, an AI startup that was acquired by McKinsey back in 2023. Today, we're going to be talking Gen AI for marketing, from hype to implementation. We are excited to welcome Eli Stein, partner and modern marketing capabilities leader at McKinsey, as our guest speaker for this webinar. Eli will guide us through the transformative journey of generative AI in the marketing space, beginning with its early adoption by businesses and exploring its evolution and vast potential. He will also share practical examples highlighting the significant impacts generative AI has made in the industry. We'll then take a short pause for a poll, and we'd love to hear from you. Next, we're pleased to welcome back Sahar Dolev-Litantal, VP of Marketing at Iguazio and the original host of the MLOps Live sessions. Sahar will delve into several compelling generative AI use cases, offering valuable recommendations and actionable tips to help you kickstart the development of your own Gen AI app. Following that, Zev Rispler, machine learning engineer and expert demo presenter at Iguazio, will deliver an engaging demonstration featuring Iguajewels, an online jewelry store. Zev will guide us through the development of a chatbot for the store's website, offering valuable insights into the power of Gen AI for enhancing customer engagement, along with a deep dive into the technology behind the hood. We'll pause for another poll, and then we'll jump into the live Q&A. Now, a few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar will be recorded and a link will be shared with you afterwards. So no need to worry if you miss anything. We have a lot to cover. As always, we'll be taking your questions live, which is often one of the most engaging parts of these webinars. So to ensure we don't miss any of your questions, please do use the Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen throughout the session, and we'll do our absolute best to address as many questions as possible. Additionally, we'll be running 2 polls during the session, and your participation is valuable and really helps us improve these webinars, and we'll share the results live at the end of the webinar. We also invite you to join our MLOps Live community, where the conversation will continue after the session, and we'll be available to answer any further questions that you may have. Please note that everyone is on mute, and the session is being recorded, like I mentioned before, so we'll share it with you afterwards. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Eli to kick things off.
Fantastic. Excuse me. Thank you, Adit, and thanks all for joining. Excited to speak with you today. Where we're going to start is with where AI in marketing has been, where it's going, and I'll share an example or two about how leading companies are innovating. So about 2-3 years ago, AI started getting more broadly adopted, and specifically Gen AI started getting more broadly adopted in marketing. Most companies started with more or less talking about it, right? Excitement, exploration, coming up with use cases, etc. Initial pilots started to be deployed, but many companies still struggle to get to scale. What you're seeing on this chart is a survey of about 100 companies we did, I'd say 9 months ago or so. And the question was very simple. Where are you in terms of your adoption on Gen AI in marketing? From we're excited and we're talking about it, to Gen AI is the new normal of how we work. To protect the innocent, we're not sharing company names, but each of these dots does represent a real company. And what we're seeing today is a lot of exploration. Some companies getting to initial pilots, relatively fewer companies getting to building capabilities at scale, and then none of the companies we surveyed, including many of the marketing leaders globally, have gone to a place where Gen AI is the new normal. So the topic for today is about what does it take to get to scale? What are some of the leaders who have gotten closer to scale are doing? There's going to be 2 views of where companies are applying Gen AI. One in terms of the campaign development process, and second in terms of some of the broader use cases that companies are adopting. I'm sure it's no surprise to you that some of the first places companies have applied Gen AI is in the campaign development process. Meaning, how do we take a strategy to something tangible to launch, both in terms of the ideas, so the brief, the assets, be them imagery, copy, video, etc., and then how they're deployed, so how they're localized, how they're personalized, etc. Some of the early use cases we saw here was the core production, right? Coming up with the first version of the image, coming up with the first version of the copy. Equally, in some of those early use cases, we saw call it the final mile. So the translation, the transliteration, the resizing, etc. As we've seen companies evolve, they've branched out in two directions. One is two, call it maybe three. One is getting AI closer to the customer. What I mean by that is having AI create a number of different versions that you can then show directly to customers with a human in the loop to make sure there's nothing unsavory. An example here is a telco client that I serve. They're in Spain, and they now release around 150 versions of each marketing asset to account for different dialects and languages in Spain, different customer segments, different socioeconomic groups, etc. Another place that companies have branched out in terms of the campaign development process is some of the, call it behind the scenes back end stuff, briefs for agencies, media plans, etc. The marketeers who are responsible for developing those assets are now, in some cases, using Gen AI to get a first version of those assets so they can spend more of their time thinking about the strategy and directing the strategy. The final place that we've seen companies started to really use AI and Gen AI in the campaign development process is the compliance and legal checks. And as you know, I'm sure you can imagine when you increase the volume of content, it also increases the demand on compliance, legal, brand checks, etc. Many of those functions today are a fairly human process, right? So increases in demand would translate directly into increases in the number of humans that are needed. And what we've seen some early leaders start to do is develop discriminative AI models to get a sense of whether an asset, be it a sentence or an image, is compliant with our brand guidelines, has any legal risk, etc. And of course, the assets that the discriminative AI algorithms thinks could be risky are then reviewed by a human. So let's take a moment to zoom out now and talk about some of the broader use cases outside of called the core campaign development process. There are 5 of them holistically. One is product discovery. So different ways and experiences that customers can find a product. For those travelers out there, I'm sure you saw Expedia's announcement around creating a chatbot that can recommend itineraries and travel for you. And of course, then it's very easy to purchase those travel products through Expedia. Similarly, a grocery store in Africa that I serve just released in beta a chatbot that enables you to do meal planning. So you iterate with the chatbot on your meal plan, and then you can tell it how big your family is, what you like to eat. You can edit the meal plan. I want more, more meat, less fish, more vegetables, more dessert, what have you. And then, of course, when the meal plan is to your liking, it can put all of the constituent ingredients in your cart. The second use case that we're seeing is hyper-personalization. Goes without saying what this is personalizing to smaller and smaller groups of customers. The telcos have largely led the way here. I told you about the telco in Spain now sending different messages to 150 segments. In the US, we see some telcos sending different messages to thousands of segments. We've started to see adoption in apparel here too. Creative efficiency and media optimization, bit similar to what we're talking about in the campaign flow. Creative efficiency, that is, how do I produce creative faster with less human input? The media optimization use cases is related but different. There, what you see is many assets being deployed. So in the past, where one might have deployed a couple different versions, see which one worked best, had the highest ROAS, and then scale the winner. What we're starting to see now is thousands of assets being deployed, not only scaling the winners, but back testing those assets to identify which subgroups of people responded to which of the many thousands of assets that were tested, and then scaling the winning assets in those granular sub pockets that were identified through the back testing. And we've seen really material increases in click-through rate and ROAS there. There's the insight synthesis and activation use case. So perennial challenge in marketing is how do you gain insights on small groups of humans? And oftentimes that is lengthy marketing research and or searching past research that in many companies is not well codified. So we're starting to see in many leaders in the insights field is developing Gen AI engines that can, via a natural language interface, retrieve information, synthesize information across sources, as well as do some light analysis. An example here is a global e-commerce marketplace that I serve. They have hundreds of thousands of SKUs given their marketplace nature in thousands of categories. It's impossible for them to stay incredibly current on every category. So what they do is they've built an engine that can look through publicly available information online, comments, 10Ks of companies, etc., looks through prior marketing research, and even increasingly is starting to analyze synthetic data, so digital twins of people, to get insights on granular categories. For instance, why are our sales in garden gnomes down, let's say in West Virginia, and what could it mean for our broader strategy in home goods? Finally, there's automating the business of marketing. So the business of marketing is everything customers don't see: creative briefs, media briefs, first drafts of quarterly reviews, etc. And we've seen here up to a 50x increase in the speed of creation of briefs. One of the components here is marketers can be a bit more experimental, right? Because those briefs aren't going to humans, aren't going to people. So there is more latitude to experiment in terms of the output. What we'll do now is talk about an example. The example I'm going to tell you about is a leading industrial products distributor in the US. So think about a company that sells construction materials. They largely sell construction materials to job sites that are building either residential or light commercial homes. I'm not sure how familiar many of you are with this industry, but this industry, in terms of the sales and marketing motion, is a fairly slow one to modernize their sales approach. And the sales approach, in many cases, was folks driving around, right? They drive around in an F-150 truck, identify the construction sites, see if they could get in contact with the foreman, discuss the material needs of the foreperson, and then pitch why their materials are better, cheaper, et cetera, than others. What we did is we worked with them to do two things: to scrape using a combination of AI and Gen AI permits, since new building applications, at least in the US, require a permit from the government that is information in the public domain. We looked at those permits to get a sense of where the building site was located, as well as the materials that we think they need. Because a lot of the materials, of course, can be derived from the plans for the buildings, which to some degree are included in the permits. On the basis of the knowledge of what materials we think they need, we also identified the points of contact for that permit. Oftentimes it was the contractor or the architect, and we would send him or her an email that outlines our value proposition, specifically around the types of products they would need. And we also made it very easy for them just to bulk order the products, not just general products, the products that we think they would specifically need for that job site, excuse me. This information was fed both to traditional salespeople, right, human salespeople, that would still drive around and go to these job sites, but they would go to those job sites with now much more information about what was likely to resonate with the folks procuring materials for those builds. And then, of course, there are the emails that I told you about that would be much more specific about what these companies needed. What we tested in this case was how much these emails were opened and how much these emails were clicked through. And what we noticed interestingly is that when you gave humans versus Gen AI the information to create the email subject lines, the open rate was nearly the same. But the click-through rate is really what increased through Gen AI. And we had a 2.3x increase in the click-through rate when you had these very specific product recommendations as opposed to more general emails created by humans on the basis of a scan of the permit. So to us, this shows the promise of much better information gleaned through publicly available sources, translating that information into recommendations, and then translating those recommendations into entirely personalized content for a consumer. In this case, the customer, excuse me. In this case, the customer was a group of people building a building. On that note, I'll pass it off to my colleague. Oh, actually, one more poll quickly. So we talked about a number of different use cases of Gen AI in marketing. We talked about product discovery, hyper-personalization, creative efficiency, media optimization, insight synthesis, and the broader marketing automation. Would love to get a sense of which use cases are you leveraging today for Gen AI, and of course, just don't respond if you are not leveraging any use cases.
Thank you. And now I'm going to pass it over to Sahar to continue on.
Thanks so much, Edith. It's so great to be here and talk about two of my favorite topics, Gen AI and marketing, and how they come together. So let's get started. Okay, I want to take a minute to zoom out and take a look at this from a historical perspective. This isn't the first time that marketing is being disrupted by technology. And we can look as far back as the invention of computers. When computers became mainstream and came into all of our lives, marketers used them to digitize their databases. And suddenly they had control of their customers at scale. They could look at things like when customers are about to churn or when they need to renew a specific service. They could run reports, they could put in alerts, and it really took marketing to the next level. After that, the invention of the internet completely transformed the way that we do marketing. Think about the distribution channels that were suddenly available. Think about e-commerce that suddenly came into play. And about every company, no matter where they are in the world, being able to reach a global audience and being able to segment campaigns at a fraction of the cost. After that, we had the disruption of mobile, and suddenly we were able to reach consumers anywhere at any time. People have their mobile on them all the time. It's easy to create location-based campaigns, and there's specific apps that deal with different types of marketing activities. So really, we had an additional disruption that completely changed the way that we as marketers work. And now we're in the midst of the AI revolution. And I say midst because actually AI has been around for a long time. That's a topic for a different presentation. But really, right now, the explosion of Gen AI is just another kind of stage in the AI revolution. The reason that it's so potent and so different is because the technology is evolving so rapidly. There's so many tools that are available to all of us, and the adoption rates are skyrocketing because it's very easy to use. I'm sure all of you here have dabbled with some type of Gen AI tool, whether it's ChatGPT or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or whatever tool of choice you guys like to experiment with. And we're really seeing this revolution happening faster and more strongly than anything that we've ever experienced before. And what's the next step? Experts are speaking about AGI, or artificial general intelligence. This is going to be technology or machines that are actually able to reason beyond human level and are able to take on abstract tasks of a wide kind of variety. What it would mean to work alongside these types of bots or technologies, I don't know. It's definitely a super interesting time that we're living in. But let's go back to present day. I hope that by now we've convinced you that Gen AI has potential to unlock significant value for marketers. And according to our research, to McKinsey research, there's $460 billion in potential value in marketing alone. And we're already seeing 5 to 15% improvements in productivity as a percent of total market spending. What's also interesting to see is that marketing leaders are diving deep into this trend and over 90% of marketing leaders have started experimenting with Gen AI. And you can see a couple of examples here. It's the largest brands. I mean, Coca-Cola had an amazing advertisement that was Gen AI driven just when these tools became available, and there's so many other examples. And if 2023 was the year of experimentation, with enterprises asking questions like, what is Gen AI and what's its potential and which use cases are the right ones for me? We're really seeing that 2024 is ushering in the year of implementation. And enterprises are thinking about, how do I use this in my business environment? How do I avoid risks? How do I organize for scale? Enterprises are ready to reap the benefits of Gen AI for the business and to see real business value from their AI initiatives. And this is an iterative process, right? I mean, Eli was talking about this as well. Usually, companies start off with light experimentation with Gen AI, seeing what it can do for their organization. Later, they might leverage Gen AI at scale for a select marketing use case or a small amount of use cases. And finally, they get to the point where they're ready to really reinvent marketing end-to-end with Gen AI. And there's a lot of infrastructure that's needed to support this, whether it's cloud, whether it's data, models, whether it's planning for production at scale, planning your end-to-end experiences, your operating model, and the level of complexity becomes more and more complex as you move forward and as you scale your AI initiatives. Let's take a look at an example. And I'm talking about an example that's beyond an available tool. It's a company that really built their own Gen AI application to support a need. This specific example is of hyper-personalization at a consumer bank. And just for context, the majority of banks personalize campaigns in a highly manual way. They're usually based on simple customer segmentation, and they end up leaving money on the table. There's opportunities for increased engagement and revenue generation that aren't being materialized. And the solution here was a GPT-based engine to create this hyper-personalization, and we'll see the example in a second. It includes deployed next best action ML models, hyper-personalized marketing messages that are created automatically, interactive application that can actually send these campaigns out to clients. Of course, together with design guardrails and governance protocols, we'll speak in a second about the risks and the mitigation of those risks that need to be taken into account and need to be part of any type of Gen AI initiative that you're planning to roll out. And finally, a proposed framework to validate the impact. And I think the nice thing to see here is that they saw a 20% increase in conversion rates, which can be very, very crucial for a company, especially for a bank. And they saw an 80% decrease in production costs. And those of you here that are on marketing teams can imagine what you can do with this type of budget that's suddenly freed up. So let's see what this actually looked like. This is an example of the content that was tailored based on the individual customer attributes. And you can see on the left side, a customer called Bia. She's 68 years old. She's been a customer of the bank for over 13 years. She has a salary of $74,000. She holds a credit card. And the system has identified that the next best action would be to offer her a black credit card. The recommended tone here is to educate, and there's a host of other parameters that aren't shown here but are taken into account when this information is surfaced. And then you can see the campaign that was generated using Gen AI. You can see the imagery that was created for her micro segment. You can see the title, and you can see the type of messaging, the marketing message that appears here. It's very personalized. There's a link that she can click. It's coming from an employee of the bank. In this case, it's John Doe. It can be any contact owner. And you can tell that the tone has been built and crafted specifically for Bia and the kind of micro segment that she belongs to. On the right side, in contrast, is Jason. Jason is 45 years old. He's been a customer of the bank for 29 years. He has a salary of $44,000. He also holds a credit card. And here as well, the system has identified that the recommended next best action is to offer him a black credit card, the very same product. But here, the recommended tone is excite. And again, there's a host of other parameters that aren't shown here that are taken into account when this campaign was built especially for him. You can see that the title is completely different, your exclusive invitation. You can see the image that's completely different, taking you into new kind of different domains. And you can see that this email is more like a marketing email. It has bullet points, it has a button, it's sent out from the Bank X membership team, completely different from the email that was sent out to Bia. Let's see what this looks like in the back end. So if you think back to my first slide, kind of showing the history, you'll see that a lot of this information existed in the bank from the get-go. And you can see the customer data, or what the bank knew and what they know all along about their customers, their name, their age, how long they've been a customer, their salary, what kind of products they use, and so on. What traditional AI gives us is a prediction. How likely is this customer to purchase an additional product or an upsell? And here you can see that the Black credit card had an 85% chance of being picked up by this customer, and that's why it was selected for the campaign. Now, what does GenAI add on? Where's kind of the innovation or the news in this campaign? GenAI was actually used to generate the messages themselves, and they were used to choose the right channel, the right cadence, the right time of day, and the right tone to deliver this message to each customer. So this is incredible. This is an entire campaign that was generated with the assistance of GenAI. And you can see the example here. There will be a text message going out Tuesday, followed by an email going out Friday, and then the following Friday, another text message. And you can really see here the precise way that these customers are being engaged and why there's a 20% lift in conversions. Let's take a look at another example. This is an example of a GenAI-powered conversational knowledge platform called Lily. It's an internal platform that's used by McKinsey colleagues worldwide. And Lily provides a chat interface that's built on top of best-in-class LLMs, which helps McKinsey employees understand the knowledge that's available at their fingertips, including documents, PowerPoint slides, expert interviews, industry data sets. There's over 100,000 proprietary documents and 200,000 third-party documents that are taken into account in Lily. And Lily's able to surface the insights from these documents in a very easy way. And it's basically an assistant in the research process. And you can see that Lily's already creating impact across the firm on a global scale. There's 20,000 monthly active users, over 250,000 weekly user inquiries, and over 6 million questions that have already been answered by Lily. So this is really an example of an implementation at scale. It won't be a presentation about GenAI if we don't stop for a minute to talk about risks, and responsible AI. There's a lot of risks when you're introducing GenAI into an organization. There are things like impaired fairness and IP infringement and privacy concerns. You really want to protect your customers' data. There's the possibility of malicious use. There's performance and explainability risks, security threats, and the list goes on. There's a lot of things that can be implemented to help mitigate those risks. And it's not just about technology, right? It's never just tech. It's also the people and the processes that have to do with bringing GenAI into the business applications. So things like implementing LLM as a judge, which is an LLM that sits on top of your existing LLMs and helps to mitigate any type of AI hallucinations. It's things like making sure to remove PII, personally identifiable information. It's making sure to have that human in the loop. It's building guardrails and a feedback loop. And a lot of this can be built into the technology to help you mitigate these risks. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is a staged approach for rolling out GenAI, because GenAI can be daunting. And this is just an example, but I think the theory and the idea behind it is really important. You don't need to go directly into the areas that provide the most risk for the organization. You can easily start with something that's a bit more back office. This is an example of a call center analysis application, which transcribes and analyzes customer calls from a large call center. It's an example of a client of ours. And what we basically did here was transcribe calls from the call center, also translate them because they came in a foreign language, to understand things like which topics are being discussed, which reps are doing a good job, what's the sentiment on the calls overall, how many calls are being successfully resolved. These are all things that can be analyzed and produced as insights to the organization, and they can also be fed into downstream applications. Once you're comfortable with this type of application, you can go into something that's more, that's kind of the next level up, or the stage 2. This is an agent copilot. Essentially, it's an application or an assistant that helps your live human agent in conversations with clients. Again, sticking with the call center example. In this case, there's a real-time Copilot agent that sits on top of the agent's desktop and can surface insights. It can surface information from the company's guidelines, or documentation or processes, any type of information that belongs to the company specifically, to help the agent have better conversations. It can also listen in and hear for sentiment. It can flag keywords that the customer is saying, really be an assistant to the agent as he's taking the customer through the call. This can help train new agents. It can help slash the times for handling requests, and it can help improve customer satisfaction. Finally, this is kind of the third and maybe highest level for implementation. We can have a virtual agent that connects directly and speaks directly with customers. And this can be either by voice or audio, or it can be a chatbot that's implemented on your website or in any kind of customer application. And here, the risk level is a bit higher because they're conversing directly with the client. It's happening in real time. There's also a lot of mitigation that can be done on the technological level and in terms of the processes to make sure that your chatbot is aligned with company policy, that it doesn't go off topic, and so on. But this can be kind of worked up towards. You don't need to start off with an application like this. You can work towards it, and when you feel comfortable, start to implement something like this. To summarize, I want to leave you with 6 truths in scaling Gen AI. First of all, cut the noise. Be honest about what pilots work for you. If you've already experimented, try to direct your efforts towards the areas that have brought you the most value, and really think about the business value that you're going to get. What type of ROI are you going to see from these initiatives? Secondly, it's not just about the pieces, it's how they fit together. Scale relies on effective orchestration and end-to-end automation, from data all the way to monitoring and managing applications in production. And it's something that needs to be taken into account when you're building out your Gen AI applications or when you're selecting the right tool to help you do that. Third, manage costs. Gen AI can be very costly. I'm sure that those of you who have dabbled with it have seen that. And models account for only about 15% of the overall cost of Gen AI applications. You need to take into account things like GPU provisioning and job orchestration, and even things that don't have to do with the technology, like change management. So all of these need to be taken into account when you're building the business case for implementing Gen AI. Fourthly, assemble minds, not just models. Getting to scale requires a team. It's a lot of teamwork. You need to make sure that everyone's on the same page and really invested in this process, and make sure that everyone is swimming in the same direction. Getting the right data, this is super important. Sometimes it's very, you kind of want to take into account all of the data that the organization has, but large data programs are the surest path to slow death. Instead, focus on the data that's going to create the most impact. Start with something small and build up. You can always add more data as you go along, and you can always improve the applications as you mature. Finally, embrace challenges to enable growth. Gen AI is a journey, it's a process, and you need to take into account that this is such a rapid changing landscape. Things are going to shift. Things are going to shift. You're going to want to go in different directions. Look at it as a journey that you're taking together with your team. Make sure that there's priority from the organization to be able to really do this in the right way. Make sure that you're taking into account the risks and you're putting in the right guardrails and the right governance techniques to mitigate them. But I assure you that if you do this in the right way, you'll really be able to reap the benefits of Gen AI in your organization. Thanks so much. With that, I will pass it to my colleague Zeb, who will give a live example.
Hey everyone, happy to be here. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start from this. Thanks for having me here. Pleasure as always, especially this time when I have this the pleasure to hear Sarah and Eli. So nice to be here and talk to you guys. So today we'll be tapping into what Sarah showed us towards the end, and we'll be talking about a virtual assistant using Gen AI. In our example, we'll be showing a jewelry shop, which we will call Iguazio Jewels, and we'll have a Gen AI assistant that will help us serve our customers, help them select what jewel they want. It can be done based on their previous purchases. It can be based on whatever events they have, specific requirements, so on. It can also answer questions regarding store policies, about the jewelry, and that's it. We don't want it to answer anything else that's unrelated. We don't want people to abuse it. So yeah, let's see how it's going. Okay, so this is the general logic that we use for most of our demos. We're taking advantage here of the GenAI factory. Name is maybe about to change, but it's an overall framework to build GenAI apps with safety and with ease to take them from development to production easily. That's what we do here in Iguazio. So we have a lot of building blocks that you can take and use, like the session loader, query refinement that we use most of the time, and the history saver, so that you can have a history for a session and you don't have to deal with it on your own. Also, we have here all sorts of guardrails. In this example, we have a subject classification to make sure that we're only asked about stuff related to what we want to talk about here at the jewelry store, and a toxicity filter, of course, for both the input of the customer, the user, and also for the agent to make sure it doesn't slip anything. And we can also connect it to monitoring, outside monitoring using the Iguazio framework, and we can iterate and retrain the model if we see that we have some things that we fail on persistently. Also, we can connect to outside databases, and this is what we do here. So let's take a look into the application logic. This time I mixed it up a bit since last time, and we'll be talking about LLM agents. So what is an agent? Usually we know about LLM, and LLM is great. You know, you can go to ChatGPT and you can ask him a question, and he can answer you. But in general, that's what he can do. You know, you can connect him with some history, but the knowledge that he has, it's what he has, and it can answer you. It can sometimes, if it's a really good one, answer complex questions, but most of the time it can't do much more. So what we're trying to do here is give the LLM the power to activate some outside tools. A tool can be anything, okay? It can be ability to search online. It can be a connection to a database. It can be even some pre-written answer to a specific question. It can be something to compute whatever he's been queried about. And this makes the LLM much more powerful and much more useful. So what we are gaining here with the connection of tools is, and turning this into an agent, is task planning, first of all. We give the LLM the option to decide which tool to use, when, how to use it, and if he wants to, he can use several tools in a row, one after the other, to make it even better. So yeah, like I said, tool use makes external tools or APIs to make complex tasks. Adaptability, we can take one LLM and make it work with a lot of different use cases. We don't have to fine tune it every time. We can just change the tools, which is very easily. You know, if we have some general strong LLM and some tools that we can use in a number of places, we can take them and just use it for this kind of store or that kind of different store, or what do you call it? Never mind, you know what I mean. We can use the same tools and just mix and match between them. And also we can gather all the information to make it improve the model, improve the tools, and overall improve our agent. So for our specific agent right here, we created 5 tools. You can see them in different colors. We have both of these, the green tools. They are accessing outside SQL database, which have all the data of the clients. And the second one, which has all the data of the products. Now we use this data to do personalization for the client. Because if we have a client that's already purchased with us, we have his history, we have his preference, we have the conversations, the history, and we can use that to know what he likes, recommend stuff that are very similar to what he previously bought, and not to offer him stuff that we already purchased. Then we have these ping tools, which are different. They are called RAG, that's Retrieval Augmented Generation. This is a way that you make the LLM answer questions about the knowledge that it doesn't have. What we do is we connect it to some sorts of text, we divide them into vectors, and each time we query for the most relevant sentences and give it to the LLM so we can have some context for his answer. So we use this to give him data that's relevant for the store policies, to some fashion tips, like general tips about color combination, metals, gems, what's in fashion right now, whatever you can think about, you can give him and he will try to use it. And some details about sizing of jewels. Demo itself, yeah, sorry, Edith. So I'll share my screen. So for this example, we'll be seeing a husband that's buying a gift, that's shopping for a gift for his wife. The husband is a new customer in our system, so he doesn't have any purchase history, but he's a husband shopping for his wife, so he's pretty confused. So we'll try to make it a bit hard on the AI assistant and take a look how it goes. So we're starting with telling him about the occasion. We're looking for a piece of jewelry. Let's see how he helps us. Now, like any shop clerk, he will need some more information, metal, what kind of jewelry is it, gems, budget, and we'll make it hard on him again. We'll just tell him the occasion and tell him what she doesn't like. She doesn't like rings, bracelets, and I'm not sure about earrings. So we want him to figure out that we're looking into necklaces, which he recommends us right here. And again, he asks us a bit more about metal, stones, budget, and I don't want to tell him that. I just want to give him the gold and want him to offer some things to me, like it will be in a real store. The clerk won't just stand there and keep asking you questions. It will start recommending things and show you. So I think gold is good, it's classy, and we will take a look at these options, choose what we want. If it doesn't offer something that we want, we can pick again, and a whole conversation with it. Okay, so he chose 3 necklaces for us. You can see the first one is a great yellow gold necklace, and then we have 2 with white gold, 1 with diamond, the second one has a butterfly, but I want something different, so I'll look for pink gold. I'll ask him if he has anything in stock. Just to show you a bit about how he looks and shows me all the examples. Usually he would know to recommend based on my previous purchases, but right now I don't have any, so just based on this conversation. Okay, so I like the second one. It's pink, it's nice, it's round, has diamond. Now let's ask him a bit about the store policies. So I ask if I can pay with my American Express card. He will take a look at the policy I gave him, find the relevant sentences, and answer based on that. And he says I can answer, which is great, so I can buy it. And now he wants to ask if he should add it to my cart. And no, I just want him to pass me to the product page, and he sends me right there. Now I can take a look, add it with more detail if I want to, and make the purchase.
Thank you so much, Zev and Sahar, for your fantastic sessions. Now we're just going to take a quick moment and launch the second poll, and then we're going to dive into the live Q&A session. So if you could just take a moment and please tell us, how do you access your Gen AI models today? Is it commercial by API, commercial by self-host, open source by self-host, commercial by third party, open source by third party, none or other? Feel free also to elaborate if it is other. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, thank you everybody for answering. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And if Zev, Sahar, and Eli, if you can turn on your cameras, let's dive into these questions. Got some great ones in here. Okay. Sorry, go ahead, Zev.
No, I just see someone is asking here about the monitoring framework, and the next one is also about the credit card scenario, which wasn't shown here, but it's very similar. That's asking about how we know if the recommendation is based on actual data or what we call hallucinations of the LLM. And these two topics really come together, because what we would do is, first of all, I wouldn't let the model answer based on his own information. I would connect some kind of data source, like I showed with the RAG tools, or it doesn't have to be a tool, but just connect some kind of data source to it. And then you can deploy a monitoring app to make sure that he answers okay, and what we call guardrails that can fix his answer or make him answer again, or send some kind of answer, we couldn't answer it right now, try again, some kind, just to make sure that he doesn't answer made up stuff. And the Iguazio monitoring app, it's a general monitoring app that we created with some already pre-built small applications like LLMS Judge that Sar told you about, and a connection to existing one like Hugging Faces Evaluate that you can use and deploy to monitor your application. It will be available in the next version of ML, so stay tuned.
Thanks, Zev. Eli, there's a question here for you. What do you expect will happen with the arrival of deep reasoning models like O1?
That's a, excuse me, great question. And I think potentially 2 to 3 things, depending on the time frame. I think that the biggest thing that will impact marketers is the agentification of the purchasing process. And what I mean by that is, if you have an agent making purchasing decisions on your behalf, the whole game of marketing entirely changes. You can already start to see it in low involvement categories like groceries, right? A fridge that will automatically detect when you're out of something that exists today, and then an agent that will make replenishment purchases on your behalf, like getting more milk. Marketing then will become about how do you influence agents as opposed to how you influence humans. In a way, you kind of think of it as the new SEO, and that will involve segmenting agents. It will involve thinking about which optimization functions are different agents using, which data they're using to make those decisions, how you transmit those data to agents, that data to agents via APIs, et cetera. So I think that will fundamentally change the unit of analysis for marketing. That to me is like the farthest out implication. A potentially near in implication is the ability of marketing Gen AI applications to have less human oversight, which will throttle up 2 things potentially. One is the amount of hyper personalization that companies can do, because there'll need to be less human oversight as to what actually goes out. The other is the degree to which companies and influencers will be able to essentially, share the parenting of brands. And when you've got models that are good enough to reason such that we can create tools that influencers can use to produce content on our behalf, the access of a marketer to privileged communities where their brand might not be seen as, authentic if it's in the company's voice, entirely changes. So those are a couple of the called bigger picture things that I would see from new types of targets for marketing, new access to gated communities, and then of course even more ubiquity and hyper-personalization is what I expect to see as deep reason models become a bit more prevalent.
Thanks, Eli. There's a question here about steps to evaluate Gen AI output before accepting the solution. I think that's really interesting. Something that you both Sahar and Zev were talking about. Reviewing the output and analyzing it and the whole monitoring aspect. So maybe one of you could elaborate on the evaluation element.
So I'll go. So it really depends on what kind of question you're answering and based on what you're answering it. If, like I said, you're answering based on some kind of data source, I would first compare what you have to the data source. You could do that pretty easily. You can also take, just when you retrieve the data, you can take a metric of how close it is to the question asked. So that gives you a very good knowledge about if the data is relevant and if you have relevant data at all. Then if you want to be a bit more thorough, I would go and check with an LLM as a judge, like to give a second model an option to test it. Yeah, and those will be like the main steps. Of course, I would do a lot of checks for, toxicity, stuff like that I would always make sure, but most models are pretty secure already, so I just check the input, and if it's something that's toxic or something I don't want to answer, I would just go straight and return some kind of pre-written answer to save time and money of calling the models for nothing.
Thanks, Zev. And while you answering that, maybe for any best practices, I know you kind of, we talked about this in the session, but are there any best practices to deploying machine learning models? If there's, maybe one or two that you can highlight.
That's so general, but
I know.
yeah. So best practices, make sure that you monitor your model and that how do you say it, the scale and the amount of data that you serve is in how do you say it? Is like the same size of the amount of models and GPUs you use, so don't just keep a lot of GPUs on air because it's very expensive. You can use, like we have in Iguazio, an automatic scaling option that sees if you have a lot of traffic, it brings up more GPUs and more instances of the model and takes them down if it sees that it's not so busy. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I know there's so many. I think we have time to take one more, and then I want to make sure to share the poll results. So let's see here. Sahar, is there anything that you want to respond to? If not, I'll hand it back to Eli.
Maybe I'll just take the one about AI agents. There's a good question here about, is there a future of cross-platform agent interaction, and how will data and actions be shared in such cross-platform scenarios? So I think definitely, I mean, we're already kind of seeing and imagining scenarios where chatbots are interacting with each other. And Eli mentioned earlier about marketers needing to market to ChatGPT so that the company appears in the right places and your product appears in the right context and so on. So I think there's definitely a future where AI agents collaborate together, and you can think about it kind of like an orchestration. If you have a team today of marketers that are working together, and one of them is doing copy and one of them is doing images and another is doing strategy and so on, you can think about a team of AI agents, and each of them has a different role, and they collaborate together on very complex, very complex campaigns or very complex kind of strategies and build those together. I don't think we're very far from such a future. And I think that will also lead into AGI, where one kind of technology will be able to tackle lots of different problems and very abstract problems. So like I said earlier, it's a very fascinating time that we're living in, and this technology just accelerates and improves so quickly. And you're already seeing models both for ChatGPT and for other applications that are just improving, on a monthly basis. So I think that's definitely an area that we could be seeing more and more kind of collaboration between different AI agents.
Website at iguazio.com. There you can explore previous sessions from this webinar series at your convenience. You'll also find, as you can see on my screen, a wealth of resources, including blogs and videos, demos, best practices, case studies, and more. Feel free to take a look, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Before we end, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Eli and Sahar and Zev for their fantastic presentations. And of course, a big thank you to all of you for joining the session, for your engaging questions and active participation in the chat. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to having you in our next session. So thank you all very much and have a great day.